Good morning, E116a. My name is Paul Bosmer, and this is Al's Liquor's 2024-2025 Scope 3 GHG Emissions Report. Al's Liquors is a family-owned liquor store in South Boston, Massachusetts. The facility is 6,000 square feet with 3,000 square feet of storage space in the back and 3,000 square feet of storefront. Al's Liquors has 6 full-time employees, serves 100 customers per day, and sells 1,000 cases of liquor monthly. The upstream T&D companies that supply Al's Liquors are Burke Distribution and Quality Beverage. Burke Distribution is located in Randolph, Mass., and Quality Beverage is located in Taunton, Massachusetts. This report has identified various probable Scope 3 categories relevant to improving reduction strategies, risk management, and stakeholder information. These categories include Scope 3 Category 1 Purchase Goods and Services, Scope 3 Category 4 Upstream Transportation and Distribution, Scope 3 Category 9 Downstream T&D, Scope 3 Category 11 End-of-Life Treatment, Scope 3 Category 5 Waste Generated in Operations, and Scope 3 Category 7 Employee Commuting. The relevance of these categories were determined using the SBTI 2018 Value Change in the Value Chain document. The calculation approach was conducted under the Operational Control Consolidation approach because Al's Liquors has 100% control over operations within its facility. Since supplier-specific data was unavailable for this report due to the unwilling cooperation from Tier 1 upstream suppliers, the spend-based calculation method was used for this report, utilizing primary data from receipts from Al's Liquors. For example, Figure 1.2, the decision tree for selecting a calculation for emissions from purchased goods and services of the technical guidance for calculating Scope 3 emissions from the WRI and WBCSD 2017 document was used to determine the calculation methodology used in this report. The calculation tool used in this report used primary data in the form of receipts, which was converted into activity data, which were calculated by hand using Microsoft Excel, or the spend-based method using Earthster. Once the activity data was gathered, emissions factors for CO2, N2O, and CH4 were gathered from Table 1, from Table 2.1, and Table 2.4 of the Climate Registry 2023 Default Emissions Factor document and converted to emissions factors to calculate CO2 emissions. CO2 emissions were then multiplied by the AR5 global warming potentials listed on Table 5.1 of the TCR 2023 Default Emissions Factor document, and then converted to metric tons of CO2 equivalent. The total Scope 3 emissions from Scope 3 Category 1 Purchase Goods and Services and Scope 3 Category 4 Upstream T&D measured in this report are 150.62 metric tons of CO2 equivalent. Al's Liquors 2024 report totaled 45.29 metric tons of CO2 equivalent for Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions last semester. This includes 35.69 MT CO2 from Scope 1 stationary combustion, 1.98 from fugitive emissions, and 7.62 MT CO2e from Scope 2 electricity. Therefore, Scope 3 emissions are 33.3 times higher than Scope 1 and Scope 2 combined as the largest source of emissions. Quality Beverage is 37.7 miles from Al's Liquors, requiring a 75.4 mile round trip with 59 trips totaling 8.37 metric tons of CO2 equivalent annually. In contrast, Burke Distribution is closer to Al's Liquors at 29 miles away, needing a 58-mile round trip with 61 trips per year, totaling 6.658 metric tons of CO2 annually. Together, they produce 15.03 metric tons of CO2 annually. Since Quality Beverage is further away, this report suggests that Al's Liquors should only use Burke Distribution to cut Scope 3 Category 4 Upstream T&D. Switching to Burke would lower total emissions from 15.03 metric tons of CO2 to 13.09 metric tons of CO2 annually, marking a 12.85% reduction. Conversely, if Al's Liquors switched to quality beverage for all of its upstream T&D, emissions would rise to 17.02 mtCO2e, increasing emissions by 11.33%. Hence, this report recommends an immediate 12% absolute reduction in Scope 3, Category 4 upstream T&D emissions, followed by an additional 8% cut in other Scope 3, Category 1 purchased goods and services emissions by 2030 based on 2025 baseline. Since it's a little bit harder to measure and gain cooperation for upstream purchased goods and services, it would be a lot easier to make a reduction for upstream T&D, since Al's Liquors has 100% control using the operational control consolidation approach. This overall 20% reduction by 2030 will be informed by emissions trends in 3 future reporting years post-2025 up to 2028, guiding SBTi compliance toward the net zero goal of 2050 that Al's Liquors has committed to. Although Al's Liquors has not yet begun to reduce Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, this inventory provides essential metrics and data to set forth initial reduction strategies and to meet reductions targets. Further, this report will provide data to upstream goods and services manufacturers that can provide valuable information to assess the product's life cycle chain. The disclosure and reporting of this data by Al's Liquors to upstream manufacturers and suppliers can provide data to reduce supply chain risk by minimizing business disruption from environmental, social, and economic impacts. This is consistent with standards set forth by the IPCC, GPR, WRI, and WBCSD for comparison, benchmark, fairness, and continual improvement.